Okay, so we only have three muscles to work with, right? Okay, you have the external, intercostal muscles, internal intercostal muscles, as well as diaphragm. Okay, that's all you can work with. Okay? So when you breathe in, which one should you contract? Okay. Breathe in, external, internal. This one need? No need. Okay, who says need? Who says no need? Right, okay, so and the question is, when the diaphragm is contracted, what does it look like? When the diaphragm is relaxed, you're very cute. Okay, everyone just, right, okay. And then when it's relaxed, what does it look like? So actually when it's relaxed, it's arched upwards. When it's contracted, it's flattened down. So when you breathe in, you want your diaphragm to be flat or to be arched. Okay? I hope you can see that you need to be flat so that you can increase the volume of this space. Yeah? So therefore you need to contract it. So when you breathe out, passively, which one should you contract? Okay, trick question, none. Okay, you don't relax, no, you don't contract any of them. So all of them can be relaxed. Next, when you breathe out actively, which one should you contract? You contract internal, external don't need, diaphragm, they also don't need. Okay, so that's the mechanism of breathing. Again, if you forget everything, just memorize for breathing in. Okay, you relax the internal, contract the external. Okay, just memorize. Okay. Ah yes, okay. So, which part of your nose can you find all this? Scroll down. Maybe you don't say about this. Page 10. Okay, if you go to page 10, you should see whatever you've learned and decipher yourself in words. Okay, today my cable is bad. Only at times you'll see it with color. Okay, you always see it with color. Right, today we're going to close up the chapter. Yeah, but I just want to check, I can't remember all the classes I go to. Have we talked about the alveoli and the structure? I feel like we barely did. No, I don't think we fully did. Okay, so before we close up the chapter, we're going to discuss one more thing. Let's see how much you remember from last week also. Okay, for some of you this may be familiar already because I've done this. Okay, so first and foremost, when we look at the respiratory system, there are a lot of tubes. Right? Remember all the tubes? Okay, so can you remember all the tubes? The main tube, then these two tubes, after that the ones that branch out. Remember? Yeah? Okay. You go and tell your friend what it is. What is this? What is this? What are all these? Okay, so last week also we mentioned a few adaptations that will help keep the airways clear. We want air to be able to flow in and out with no obstruction. There are several factors that can allow these airways to be kept as clear as possible. Okay? Okay, what do you remember from last week? To help keep the airways clear and open all the time. Okay, number one, we have cartilage. Remember? Okay, we have cartilage. The cartilage at the trachea region is C-shaped in nature. In fact, you can always feel your trachea cartilage, right? You can feel the rings even, right? One ring, and then there's like an indentation, and then there's another ring, and then another ring. Okay? Your bronchi also has cartilage to keep it open. The bronchioles also expect small little cartilage to keep it open. Okay? The cartilage provides infrastructure to keep the airways open. Another thing that helps keep the airways clear, if we were to zoom in to the layer of cells, we see cells that look kind of like this, with little indentations, and then with a lot of air. Okay? So how are these adapted to help keep the airways clear? Okay, secrete mucus. Number two. So mucus secreted. What's the name of the cells? Okay, goblet cells. What do you say? Okay, secreted by goblet cells. Okay, so the goblet cells will secrete all the mucus coming out. Okay. Last but not least, another factor, or the hair. What's the hair called? It's cilia. So the cilia helps sweep up the mucus with the trapped particles of dust. Okay? I'll just write dust in this case. Right? So these three factors help keep our airway clear. I quite like this chapter because everything is quite, you experience it quite often. Yeah? Cannot remember what keeps your airways clear, go and give yourself a feel over here. If you cannot remember how to produce mucus, now you also can also. Yeah? So this chapter is very relatable. Everything that we are learning, we just try to put into perspective what you already experience very often. Okay, so this is one category of adaptations that we can look at. All the tubes, right? We are adapted to keep the airways clear. I would now like to zoom in to the. Oh, I brought it here today. Go and pick it up. Okay, I want to zoom in to at the end of each bronchiole, there are air sacs. But I don't say air sacs anymore. Alveoli, right? How are these alveoli adapted for their function? I'll give you one more. You jot down whatever you want to jot down. Okay? Next, let's talk about the adaptations of the alveoli. If we were to zoom in, all the bronchioles will eventually branch out to the air sacs. Okay, so what I'm drawing here are the air sacs. Okay, they look very lumpy because they look like a lot of grapes bundled up together. Okay, let me draw another air sac. Yeah, I believe I asked your class to try and find a really good image online to put inside your notes. Oh, you have to draw air sacs. Okay, good also. Okay. Can I get you to find this particular image if you have not found that before. Type alveoli and capillary. Then go to images. Can you try to find this particular image? Oh, this one is good. Okay. Try to find this particular image over here. I don't think I've done this with your class yet. Or did I? You found a similar image? Yeah? Embed that into your notes. I find this a really good image to depict one of the adaptations of the alveoli. Okay, in the image that you found, what they are showing you are two things. One is a single alveolus. Two, you will see a blood capillary surrounding the alveolus. The blood capillary is often depicted as a cross section, so you are looking at it sliced. Okay? You also find, if you look very carefully, the blood capillaries is just one cell thick, as you've learned in the chapter of circulatory system. Okay? Just one cell thick. Right now, okay, we are almost closing out the chapter. We're going to talk a little bit about how our air sacs or the alveoli are adapted. How really? Okay, so number one, first adaptation. There are numerous alveoli. Okay? There are numerous alveoli. How is that good for our body? It helps increase the surface area for gaseous exchange. It's not clear to us by now. What in the world is the function of the alveoli? It is for gaseous exchange. So everything that is adapted for is for this particular function. This is where we exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide with our blood. Number two, of how it is adapted, you often find that the alveoli is not just balloons over there. There are lots and lots of blood capillaries that branch on the surface of the alveoli. Lots of blood capillaries. These blood capillaries came from the heart. More specifically, they branched out from the pulmonary artery. And the blood capillaries that manage to get the oxygen will then go back to the heart via the pulmonary vein. So if you ever wondered, all these arteries and veins, where in the world did they go to? Specifically, they went to our alveoli to grab oxygen from there. So the second adaptation is that rich network of blood capillaries. Why is it important to have a rich network of blood capillaries? So that, I don't know if this makes sense to you, so that we can maintain a concentration gradient for exchange. If we keep supplying fresh blood that doesn't have oxygen, then it's much easier for the oxygen in the alveoli to diffuse out. Okay? So lots of blood coming in. Blood coming in is low in O2. But that's a good thing, because if it's low in O2, fresh O2 will want to diffuse into the bloodstream. Okay, so it helps maintain that concentration gradient. Always supply with fresh blood that is low in oxygen. The last one is that our alveolus or alveoli is just one cell thick. What's the good thing about being one cell thick? It reduces the distance for diffusion. Best part is the capillary is also one cell thick, so things can diffuse really easily. These 3 points are actually also adaptations of the villi in our small intestines. So whenever our body needs something to be received really fast, you'll find that these adaptations always come into play. We need a lot of them. We need a lot of blood capillaries. We need to be one cell thick. If you cannot copy fast enough, this is OneNote. Feel free to take photo and embed into your OneNote directly. Yeah? These are more key adaptations, but you can find other adaptations in your textbook too. I'll give you one example of a small adaptation in your textbook that you may have missed. For example, one of the adaptations that is mentioned in your textbook is that within each alveolus there is a layer of water. There's a layer of moisture. And that's really important too, because in reality these gases cannot quite enter our blood without first diffusing into the water and into our blood. Actually we cannot carry air bubbles in our bloodstream. These air bubbles carried into our bloodstream can affect our blood pressure, and things won't quite work well if we have air bubbles. So actually if you go and take one needle and insert into yourself, you go and squeeze in air, it's highly deadly to yourself. Yeah, you can kill someone by squeezing air into your bloodstream. So this air, when we transport air, it doesn't transport as air bubbles. It diffuses into this moisture first, then into the blood. And we know that our red blood cells are the ones that carry the oxygen. Yes?
How about CO2?
Right, okay, what about CO2? Sorry, what's your question?
Then how does it enter the alveoli?
Right, okay, so blood that's entering here has high CO2. Here there will be very low CO2. What that means, right, any CO2 in the bloodstream will want to diffuse into the alveolus. But, so good question, it will first diffuse from the blood into the moisture. Then from the moisture, it will come back out as gas. FYI. Okay? So broadly, these are some adaptations of our alveoli that help in achieving the best possible gaseous exchange that we can get. To close off the chapter today, we're going to talk about how we can damage these things. Not that I want you to damage them, but a lot of people do damage their alveoli and their trachea and everything along. Basically, you can damage your respiratory system. How? I'm not going to teach you how, I'm going to tell you how it can happen. You all probably learned this in primary school, you all have no smoking campaign in primary school. Or is it a no drugs campaign? No drugs. This is odd. I would think cigarettes are easier to get than drugs. Sugar. Okay, to close up the chapter, we're going to watch a video. This video is a little bit. Let me test the audio first.
Okay, so let's just put it on the table here. Okay, E.T. is frequently cited as one of the worst video games in.
Why was I watching? Okay, in this video, they're going to show you real lungs attached to a setup. Okay? Smokers' lungs versus healthy lungs. If you've not seen before, okay, these are actual real lungs.
Take a look at these two sets of lungs. This set is pink and healthy. They represent the lungs of a healthy person. This set doesn't look so way. They represent the lungs of someone who is smoking.
Okay, the color makes both lungs look bad. Okay, the lung on the left is the really bad one.
Half a cigarette, that's 20 cigarettes, every day for 20 years. Let's take a closer look at what's happening in the healthy lungs. They're being inflated with air, just like when we breathe. As they fill up with air, both lungs expand like they should and push oxygen into the bloodstream.
Yeah, real.
We need oxygen for our body to work. When we breathe, air passes through our nose or mouth into our trachea or windpipe. In the trachea, air passes cilia. Those are tiny hairs that keep dirt and mucus out of the lungs. From the trachea, air passes into two large tubes. Each tube splits off into many smaller tubes. At the end of these smaller tubes is a cluster of tiny air sacs. There are over 600 million air sacs in our lungs. Imagine how small they must be. Each air sac is covered in small blood vessels that take the blood directly to your heart. The oxygenated blood goes directly to your heart, and your heart pumps it to all the cells in your body. Now, back to the smoker's lungs. These represent the lungs of someone who smoked for 20 years. These lungs are a blackish brown color because of the tar that comes from each cigarette. Tar is a sticky black substance that is created when some chemicals burn and melt together. The tar created by burning tobacco is similar to the tar that is used on roads. Tar in your lungs may lead to lung problems that can make it hard to breathe. Even though vaping doesn't force tar into your lungs, it does cause your lungs to get inflamed and clogged with blood, pus, and other fluids. The chemicals in cigarettes also cause lung cancer. If you look here, lung cancers have started to form. They start in the cells that line the surface of the lungs, like this white area. The lower portion of this lung doesn't inflate. That is what lung diseases like COPD and emphysema look like. People with these diseases find it hard to breathe, and they struggle with even the smallest, easiest activities like walking. Which set of lungs would you like working for you? The choice seems pretty clear.
Okay, so how does smoking relate to whatever we've learned? Why do smokers have such a tough time breathing? If we go to tab 3, right, we go back to a little bit of what we started out with. I did ask you at the very beginning to screenshot this particular image of the alveoli. Right? On the left, it's a healthy person's hair sacs, alveoli. On the right, you can see unhealthy person's one. Usually this is the hair sacs of someone who has smoked a lot. Compare the difference. Which one has less surface area for gaseous exchange? Yeah? Okay? The problem with smokers is that you notice smokers cough a lot. Yeah? That excessive coughing, trying to get out all the particles and chemicals inside their system, the irritants, can cause a lot of damage. You see this damage here? It's not exactly caused directly by the smoke. It's caused by very forceful coughing. You cough very forcefully, these partitionings within the air sacs can break down. You cough hard enough, you can break down enough of this partitioning, and you have less of these small little pockets within the air sacs. So for example, if you look at one over here, with every cough you make, you may break down some of the walls. You cough, you break down some of the inner walls. You cough, you break down some of the inner walls. To the point that you may have an air sac that looks just like that. Whereas a healthy one would have a lot of smaller partitionings here and there to increase the surface area. Yeah? Right. So severe coughing can lead to this outcome. Other effects, right? Earlier on we were talking about how the trachea. Okay, let's go slightly above. When we talk about the trachea, we look at the cells over here, we see that they are goblet cells. Smoking also has a devastating effect of paralyzing all these cilia. All the cilia over here, the smoke can paralyze it. And if we paralyze that, what are we preventing our body from doing? From sweeping up the mucus that it has produced. And so, as a result, smokers can also have a lot of mucus trapped along the airways. Then we cannot keep the airways clear. Then if it's not clear, what will they do? They'll cough more. Then if they cough more, they will break down more, partitioning the walls within the air sacs. Yes? Right. So this regeneration, okay, I'm not really sure, but I suspect not really. Because the damage once done, right, smokers don't quite recover from it. Okay? I would suspect that it can recover, but the thing is, if you keep coughing, you won't give it enough time to recover too. Okay? One last thing that's quite damaging about smoke. Well, the smoke, when in contact with all these cells of our respiratory system, can trigger cancer too. If cancer develops, if a tumor develops somewhere, imagine a tumor starts to develop here. It can also obstruct the gaseous exchange. If a tumor develops along one of these airways, it can also obstruct the flow of air. Tumors can grow as a result of all this harmful smoke that's coming in. I will not be going through in depth all the chemicals involved in smoking, but if you go to your notes, okay, can you go to your notes? There's one table at the very bottom. Okay, this part is rather factual, so I will not spend time going through it. Nothing really conceptual in this particular part. Okay, so if you go to your notes, you go to the very last part on smoking, you should be able to see a table of various chemicals that you can find in smoke. Okay, some of these chemicals may be familiar to you. You've heard of nicotine, okay, you've heard of tar, you've heard of carbon monoxide. I feel like you've heard of carbon monoxide before when you learn about circulatory system. Last but not least, some irritants. Irritants are like, the dust that you can find or the particles you can find inside the smoke. So I will not be going through the things you can find in smoke in depth. Okay? You can find the effects of the various chemical components of the smoke within this table. I'll leave it to you to read it yourself. What can you expect us to assess you, to see if you understand this particular part? We could give an MCQ, maybe a simple MCQ to just put down all the various chemicals and ask you to match the effect. Okay, that's one way we could see if you understand this particular part. You have to admit this part is pure memory. Okay, not much concept. Like how you breathe, that one is conceptual. If you force yourself to go through the process, you can still remember. Okay, so this one I will require you a little bit of memory work. What do you mean practical for this? Okay, not every chapter will have practical. Yeah. Okay, so this one I'll leave it to you to learn. If you scroll a little bit down, you'll see a little bit of the effects of smoking. Earlier on, I was talking about how your air sacs, the partitioning within them can break down. There's a specific name to that. On the very last page, this name is called emphysema. If you ever see the word emphysema, they are referring to the symptom where people who suffer from emphysema, they cough so much until the partitioning breaks down. Okay, so emphysema. Well, my father used to be a very heavy smoker. I can remember every day he smoked one pack. It's like crazy. But then, sometime in primary 6, he quit smoking altogether. I like to think he quit, but I never saw him smoke again. Because my PSLE, right? PSLE I did quite well. Then he asked me what I want. Then I went up to him and I said, I want you to stop smoking. Then he stopped smoking for real. But I think he was expecting me to say, oh, I want this like latest whatever, this whatever what. I want to go this, go where, but I didn't ask for that. I just asked for his good health. Then I think he was very touched, and he really did his best to stop from that day onwards. Never seen him smoke ever since. Oh, but before that, the house always filled with smoke. Because he will smoke at the balcony, then he will smoke, then after that, I just can't go to the kitchen area because the whole kitchen will be filled with smoke. I don't know if you all have any neighbors that smoke a lot, then you get second-hand smoke. Last time, at my wife's place, there's one dude at the bottom floor always smoking, but yeah, tell you story already. So like that. Okay, this dude at the downstairs always smoking. Then every time at my wife's place, I'm like, what? So we devised a way. We took a spray bottle. Then we fill the spray bottle with apple cider. So it's a bit smelly. Every time we smoke, right, we go to the window and like. Then after that, really, you stop smoking. Then you start smoking at another window. Then we'll run there and then yeah, we just spray until he stops. Why he's harassing my lungs? Okay, second-hand smoke is equally bad. So all this stuff that you see inside, all these chemicals you see, they are still present in second-hand smoke. So don't think you're having it lesser. You're having slightly lesser, but if you were to go, if someone is smoking, if you want to experience what smoking is like, well, actually, going to smoke second-hand smoke is equally bad. Okay, so don't go and try it. Sorry, I said don't try it. Okay, so we have sort of come to the end of respiratory system. This is the last chapter before your mid-years. Okay, my advice to you is that, contrary to, it doesn't feel right, but actually it's the best way to revise. So revise this chapter first. Okay? Revise whatever you've learned first. Okay? So for example, we just learned respiratory system, revise this first. What was before respiratory system? Transport and plants. Then revise that next. Then you revise the chapter before that. Revise what you just learned first. Most recently, revise that first. It's easier. I guarantee you it's much easier to revise in this way. Rather than try to start from JH3 topics, then you revise forward in time. Because if you start from there, you realize by the time you hit today's topic, you have forgotten today's topic. So it double work, you've forgotten today's topic, then the worst part is that you have forgotten the JH3 topics that you started sometime back. But if you start today on today's topic, actually it will help you retain whatever's in there for a longer time. By the time you hit the JH3 topics, you will still retain quite a lot of whatever you learned today. Right? So study what you learned recently. It will help you retain better. Okay, so that means to say, there's one last TE before I send you off for your merry way. Okay, T not due today. Okay, so there's one more T to do. Due this weekend. Okay, and then that will be the last T before your mid-years. Next week is week 6, not your mid-years yet, right? Then week 7 is your mid-years. Yeah? No? Correct. Yeah. I think your bio years is on a Friday or week 7. Something like that. Okay? Okay, that being said, I'm going to give you your past year papers. No. Okay, you should get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stacks. Okay? 3 of the stacks are MCQs, the other 3 are structured. Okay, so I say again, you should get 3 MCQs, 3 structured. I'm going to pass it down this way. You should get 2021, 2019, and 2018. It's not as open as it should be because there isn't a